I just want to thank all of you for braving the snowstorm. It says a lot to me about your dedication for being in church, that you would come through. How many inches of snow did we get? 18 inches of snow. It was incredible. It was the biggest snowstorm that didn't come. I was ready. Was anybody ready for the snowstorm? Was anybody sort of disappointed? Yeah, I really wanted to get snowed in. I wanted to be, big. I wanted something to, Kay came all the way to Fayetteville to get snowed in with us and for us to have fun. And we had fun, but the snow never came. The snow never came. All right, we're going to hit the second chapter of Matthew now. I'm going to take us through the first two chapters of Matthew during the Christmas season. And this is Matthew's telling of the Christmas story. It's interesting. Matthew kind of jumps ahead. He gets to the birth of Christ. Jesus gets born in the first chapter. And then in the second chapter, he gets to a very interesting story that he wants to make sure that he includes. And that's the story of the... Bob? Thank you, Bob. That's the story of the Magi, the three wise men. Let's all... We three kings of Orient are bearing you. We bring from afar. I don't know it. Yeah, bringing, I think it's funny, we three kings from Orient are bringing gifts we bring from afar. Sounds like a bar. Yeah, because you got to rhyme far with bar. Anyway, Orient are. So anyway, we're going to get to the three wise men. Any of you astronomy fans? Astronomy fans? You own a telescope? You do own a telescope. This is a great place for doing astronomy. There's good seeing around here, and we get really dark skies. And Amy and I had the chance to live down sort of south of town, facing the National Forest, the southern. So we get really good, really dark southern skies. But that big city of Harrison throws up all that light, kind of ruins my seeing on the north. I wish they just turn all those lights off at night. Then we could get the full canopy. Has anybody ever been somewhere, where it was like completely, you were way out. It was completely dark. You live there. Yeah, you live there. Yeah. Bryce Canyon. Oh, the middle of the ocean. Yeah. Abe was raising his hand.
Yeah, the Galapagos Islands.
Galapagos Islands. So I don't think I have been anywhere that's, really where there's nothing for miles and miles and miles around. But in the ancient world, of course, that was their experience all the time, right? And there were people that spent a lot of their time looking up at the nighttime sky. And the Jewish people, I'm sorry, I got distracted. Wayne sitting in his chair when I said, there's a lot of people that spent their time looking up at the nighttime sky. Wayne was doing this. It's kind of distracting having Wayne Harlow while you're preaching. I just want to say that.
The dark spot where the national park is. Yeah. Where do you go and view stars?
Just when you think that Wayne is the craziest person in the church, he says stuff like that. He's actually paying attention. He knows a lot of stuff. Let's give Wayne Harlow a round of applause for saying something positive and that went along with the sermon. And what? And coherent. But, so we think that Matthew included them, because that's pretty cool to have the Magi, the astronomers, come and have seen the star come. There might be another reason that Matthew included him, is that the Magi would have been seen by a lot of people in Israel as outsiders, because there was a lot of worship of the stars back in that day and age. And the Magi, those types of people, they were known to be into astrology. And so people that are star worshipers, into astrology, all that kind of stuff, were looked at as a little suspicious, because the Jewish people very strict about the way they worship God. And as a matter of fact, one of the ways that you can look at the creation story is that in a world where the sun and the moon and the stars were often worshipped, in the Hebrew creation story, if there is light before there is sun and moon, that all of the sun, the moon, the stars are all placed in the firmament by God. So it's very clear that we're not worshiping them. We're worshiping the God who put them in the firmament. So there was some sense in the ancient world that people that did astrology were outsiders, that they were the wrong kind of believers. Okay? Now Matthew also includes in his genealogy, in the first chapter, he includes some questionable people that are outsiders. Remember, Ruth was a Moabitess. And then there was Rahab that was included, and Tamar, and Bathsheba. There were some men that did naughty things, but like a good bluegrass song, it was only the women that we really focused on. That's the women that cause all the problems, and that's what we learn in bluegrass. So these astronomers, these magi, might have been looked at askance by the good people. Okay, so that when you have that creche with the wise men there, those are people from off, different kinds of people you wouldn't expect that would come and worship. In Bruner's commentary, Frederick Bruner's commentary on Matthew, he writes, the Magi also represented the evil Gentiles disdained by devout Israel. The Magi were outsiders both in race, they were Gentiles, and in profession, astrology, yet they were invited to the party. Whatever one thinks of the Magi, one thing is clear. God, in great kindness, leads them to his Son. By placing the Magi in his Christmas story, as he had the Gentiles in his genealogy, Matthew wishes to say that God surmounts racial and moral barriers to his saving work by calling to the Son those considered most unworthy. The Magi are walking illustrations of God's Catholic, meaning all-encompassing grace. The divine invitation of astrologers to the Messiah's birth indicates the wide mercy Matthew had already found in or inserted into his Old Testament genealogy of the Christ. Matthew's genealogy showed us this in the 4 women, Tamar, Rahab, Ruth, and Bathsheba. And now the invitation of the astrologers, as we say, of all people, proves this divine for allness in one more way. The gospel that ends with the Great Commission to the nations begins at Christmas with an invitation of the nations, and even of what many consider the nation's worst elements. So who knows, you can get all of that out of the genealogy to Matthew and out of the presence of the wise men at the creche. That's pretty cool, isn't it? All right, so let's continue on. And now we get to the bad guy in the Christmas story, and his name is Herod. When I say Herod, I'd like you to say, ooh. Okay. Verse 3. When King Herod heard this, he was disturbed, and all Jerusalem with him. Now, in the ancient world, I mean, we think that, yes, I didn't read the first part. Oh, okay, yeah. After Jesus was born in Bethlehem in Judea, during the time of King Herod, Magi from the east came to Jerusalem and asked, where is the one who has been born King of the Jews? We saw his star when it rose and have come to worship him. Thank you. So now we go on to verse 3. When King Herod heard this, he was disturbed, and all Jerusalem with him. Now, in the ancient world, I mean, we think we maybe have political leaders, and we think maybe they could be rough from time to time. But in the ancient world, there was a level of just barbarity in the ancient world. And in the ancient world, the way you got people's attention was you just killed a whole lot of them. And ancient kings killed lots and lots of people. And Herod was one of those kinds. He was one of those kinds of kings, because and Herod, when he was getting ready to die, he was in his 70s and getting ready to die, because that's what you do when you turn 70. Back then. So he's in his 70s, and he knows he's going to die, but he's troubled because he knows that nobody is going to mourn. Nobody's going to be. They're going to be like, yay, ding dong. They're going to be real happy that Herod's dead. So he comes. So what he does is he has a whole bunch of people arrested, and they're like leading people, prominent people. He has a whole bunch of people arrested, and then he has them, at the time that he dies, he has them executed, so that there will be mourning whenever he dies. Isn't he a sweetheart? Yeah, he's a killer, and he's in a way, he's the counterpoint to the kings. They're the kings of the Orient are the ones that receive Christ and come to him. And King Herod is the one who tries to kill him. Okay, so verses 4 to 8. When he had called together all of the people's chief priests and teachers of the law, he asked them where the Messiah was to be born. In Bethlehem in Judea, they replied, for this is what the prophet has written. But you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are by no means least among the rulers of Judah, for out of you will come a ruler who will shepherd my people Israel. Then Herod called the Magi secretly and found out from them the exact time the star had appeared. He sent them to Bethlehem and said, go and search carefully for the child. As soon as you find him, report to me, so that I too may go and worship him. So it's interesting that Jesus has ended up being sort of a thorn for all tyrants. You can't make the kind of power that Jesus brings into the world. You can't defeat. You can't make it go away. And Herod, like I said before, was really a bad dude. Julius Caesar, who was, a pretty violent guy in his own right, he said of Herod, I would rather be Herod's pig than Herod's son. Julius Caesar said he would rather be, when it came to Herod, he would rather be his pig than his son. And there was also a reason during that time in that part of the world. Now, tyrants are always afraid. Kings and tyrants are always afraid of rebellions. They're always afraid that there's going to be like a mass movement of people. And back then, there wasn't what you call the middle class. There was basically, there was the ruling class, which was very small, and then there was basically just, most everybody existed, in poverty of some kind. So the question was, how do you keep the masses under control? And it's interesting, I was reading Barclay's commentary on this Matthew passage, and Barclay says that there was a widespread feeling in the ancient world that some kind of ruler was going to come from Israel. The Roman historian Suetonius wrote of that time, there had spread over all the Orient an old and established belief that it was fated at that time for men coming from Judea to rule the world. That's Suetonius writing in the life of this, in his work, The Life of Vespasian. And then Tacitus wrote of a firm persuasion that at this very time, the East was to grow powerful, and rulers coming from Judea were to acquire a universal empire. That's Tacitus in the histories. And then according to Josephus, the Jews had the belief that about that time, one from their country should become governor of the habitable earth. So you've got Rome, and they're all the way out over to Israel trying to control this land, and their fear is that there's people somehow, there's something from the east is going to come, and maybe something that's going to come out of Israel. And then, so when Herod hears, got some wise men coming from the east about a king to be born of the Jews, that gets his attention. Verses 9 through 11. After they had heard the king, they went on their way, and the star they had seen when it rose went ahead of them, until it stopped over the place where the child was. When they saw the star, they were overjoyed. On coming to the house, they saw the child with his mother Mary, and they bowed down and worshipped him. Then they opened their treasures and presented him with gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. So, how many wise men does it say there are? It doesn't say. How many gifts does it say there are? 3 gifts. So that's why they think there are 3. That's why they think there are 3 wise men. So if you're ever doing Bible trivia, it turns out it doesn't really say. But the 3 gifts are symbolic. The gold is fit for that's a pretty obvious one. Frankincense was an incense that was often used in worship. And I've noticed we don't use any incense in the contemporary worship service. Why is that? That's your second answer. I don't know. Well, I don't know. We could, yeah. Yeah, okay, let's get some frankincense. We've got essential. But anyway, so back in the ancient world, incense was a part of worship. So incense, frankincense have been associated with a priestly function, and myrrh was often used in burial. So the 3 gifts: king, priest, and one who would give himself as a sacrifice. So all 3 gifts are appropriate. Now, isn't it fun when you give a Christmas gift and you know the person's going to like it? That is awesome. I mean, it's really fun when you give a gift that you know somebody is really going to like. And so that raises, this is the way that we think, at this time of year, we think about gifts we're going to give each other, but what is the gift that we give to Christ? What is the gift that we make? And so I was thinking about that, and it came to me that maybe the gift that we give is that we just receive the gift that Jesus gave to us and actually live it out. So as I have studied the life of Jesus, Jesus was interested in more than, I want you to believe in me so you can go to heaven after I die. So I want you to believe in me so you can live in the kingdom of heaven right now. And we study his teachings, and he said that he prayed, Father in heaven, that your kingdom come on earth as it is in heaven. And his disciples were supposed to be bearers of the kingdom of heaven on earth in the way that they lived. And in the Sermon on the Mount, that's how they're supposed to be bearers of the kingdom of God on earth. And we'll get back to that at the first of the year. But so I think Jesus envisioned a community of disciples who would live together, and that together in their fellowship there would be a kind of a love with them that even reached out to others in the world, that would be a sign that God's kingdom was present here on earth, and that people would see that community and say, something is different with this group of people. They're living in a different kind of way. And so he pulled his disciples together, and they were going to live in community. In the ancient world, in the Greek language, if you've got a group of people together, if you've got a group of realtors together, for instance, in the ancient world, did they have realtors in the ancient world, Bob?
No.
What, you know that?
I know that.
But if you had a group of realtors, is that the correct way to say it?
Yes.
If you had a group of realtors together, realtors. If you had a group of realtors together, that would be called in the ancient world an ecclesia of realtors, because an ecclesia is a gathering. Right? If you had a gathering of disciples of Jesus, you would have a ecclesia of followers of Jesus and his way. And that word ecclesia gets translated into English as church. So, but ecclesia in its original in the original language was not a sacred word. It was just a word for gathering. So what we do is we have this gathering. Jesus also called, he seemed like he wanted people to follow in groups, to be gathered together. So that there's 12 disciples. And there's also, I think, something about this that we can take from the wise men, and we will look at this for just the last part of the message. Verse 12 says, "And having been warned in a dream not to go back to Herod, they turned to their country by another route." So you imagine, you're one of the wise men, you get up, and you turn to the other wise man, you say, "Hey, did you have a weird dream last night?" And the other wise man says, "Yeah, I did. Something about we shouldn't go back to here." Then the other wise man gets up and says, "Hey, did you have a dream?" I say, "Yeah, I had a dream too." Huh. So all three of us have had dreams. Well, what do you know about that? Maybe we ought to take a different way back home. Have you noticed that sometimes when you're in a group of people, that are going in a good direction, you get some better thinking? Like you have an idea, and you know, like when you're in a group, you're in a good group, and all those people will have good ideas. I've been in groups where people did not have good ideas. I don't want to go too far in that direction. But you can get in a group where the people start having bad ideas, and then you can go in a group that direction. I saw a guy one time, and he just, his hair was just like all messed up, and his clothes were all rumpled, and he just looked rumpled. And I saw him, and he had on a t-shirt. The t-shirt said, "That's a terrible idea. What time do we meet?" You know, so like there's a part of us that's just kind of attracted to the terrible idea or going that bad direction. And so we find out that that if we're living by ourselves, it's easy to get going that direction. So if you want to get going in a good direction in life, you need to get in a good group. I have heard it said there was no recovery without community. There's really no clear thinking without community, because just on our own, we're not clear thinkers. But when we get in a group together and you test the idea that you have out with the other folks in the group, that has a way of just making sure that you're all going in a good direction. And I've never been with like a group, like a church group that said, "Hey, let's go do something terrible." It just doesn't happen. So the wise men, there is some wisdom, and I think in that the wise men traveled together. There is strength in groups, and I think Jesus called us to be together in groups, and that's why I think it's important that we are together in church. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we give thanks for this time of year and this season in which we consider the life of the wise men, that early group of people that gathered around the Christ child and the wisdom that they had there. Help us to have a clarity of mind, to gather together with other followers of Jesus, that we can stay on the good path and that we can avoid Herod and those other bad places in this life, and we can be delivered from that, and we can take a good group home. We make these prayers, Heavenly Father, in Jesus' name. Amen. Now, I have usually been saying the Lord's Prayer at that time at the end of including that in the sermon, but last Sunday I forgot. And my mother pointed out that I forgot to say the Lord's Prayer, and so I included it at the end. And we said the Lord's Prayer together in the closing circle at the end. And so I think I want to save it for that time. I'm kind of enjoying doing that. But I will give an invitation to membership of the church at this time. And just the thing to know is that when you come and join the church, it's a wide open invitation. We don't ask you personal questions. We don't ask you about your theology. We don't ask you how you vote. I don't have to take your name and say, "Hey, I'm glad you want to join the church. Let me take your name to the next church board meeting and see if anybody has anything against you." I don't have to do that. We just welcome you. So everybody, it's a wide open welcome, a wide opening. grace here at the church. And if you're interested in joining us, we have our communion time. You just let me know, and then I'll let everybody else know. So now, as we come to the communion time, I invite our elder Dave Sims to come forward and share with us.